Hey folks, so we're hearing that the Pope has a bilateral or double pneumonia. What does this mean? So we know that this started with a bronchitis, and that's a milder infection of the lungs, often caused by a virus. What often happens is the virus weakens the lung's own immune system, and that makes the lung susceptible to then having another infection with a bacteria, and that bacterial infection can often lead to pneumonia, which is a more severe type of infection of the lungs. In this case, he has bilateral pneumonia, which means that both sides of the lungs are affected, and we also know that it's a polymicrobial pneumonia, which means that more than one type of bacteria are involved. That often means that the source of the infection is somewhere outside of the body. And when we see polymicrobial and double or bilateral pneumonia, we often think of what we call aspiration, or small bits of food that can make their way into the lungs. Unfortunately, that food often contains a lot of bacteria, and if it finds its way into the lungs, it can be the source of this kind of pneumonia. People who are older, like the Pope, who's 88, often have difficulty with swallowing, and even without knowing it, little bits of food can end up in the lungs. The last piece that has me even more worried is the fact that the Pope has had part of one of his lungs removed as a young man back in Argentina, presumably from some type of severe pulmonary infection like tuberculosis. And although we all have reserve, we all have duplication, we have two eyes, you can get away with one eye, we have two kidneys, you can donate a kidney and live off one kidney, and we have two lungs, and in fact you can live off one lung. In some cases we have to remove an entire lung, often for cancer, and that's called a pneumonectomy. And I have patients like that who live on one lung and they're just fine. They have minimal, if any, symptoms. In the past, there have been reports of people having had a pneumonectomy and eventually being able to run a marathon. So we have that duplication and that capacity. And the Pope has done very well with his sermons, and he's been a very robust man despite missing part of his lung. When you have an infection, particularly affecting both lungs in this case, he doesn't have that reserve. He doesn't have that capacity because part of one lung was previously removed. So between the fact that it's a double pneumonia, it's polymicrobial, he's previously had part of his lung removed, and the fact that he's 88, which means that his immune system is weaker, this is definitely a very precarious time, and what happens in the next few days will be very critical.